Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles. I never thought it would end like this. There wasn't some dramatic blowout, no screaming match, no shattered plates or storming out. Just a quiet, hollow moment where I finally saw my marriage for what it had become. A contract that had expired without me realizing it. She stood in front of me, arms crossed, eyes cold. The same way she always looked when she was gearing up to deliver a line meant to wound. "I don't need you," she said. "Not I don't love you. Not we need to talk. Just I don't need you." Like I was some old appliance she was finally upgrading from. Like the years I spent loving her, sacrificing for her, building a life with her, meant nothing. I stared at her, the woman I had given everything to, and tried to remember the last time she looked at me with warmth. The last time her touch wasn't just out of obligation. The last time I actually felt like a husband and not just an accessory to her life. She sighed, exasperated, like my silence was inconveniencing her. "Come on, don't make this a thing. You knew this was coming." "No, I didn't. I knew things had been off for a while. The little things, less affection, more nights out. The way she'd laugh at her phone but never share what was so funny. The sudden need for privacy. The way intimacy had become another chore on her list, one she conveniently forgot more and more often. But I never thought we were done. I never thought she had already checked out while I was still holding on. "You don't need me," I repeated, my voice calm. "All right." She blinked. I think she expected more. Rage, pleading, maybe even a desperate attempt to fix things. But I just felt tired. I wasn't going to fight for someone who had already decided I wasn't worth the effort. She shifted uncomfortably. "Look, I'm just saying, I can take care of myself. I don't need you paying the bills or fixing things or—" She waved her hand vaguely. "Whatever else you do. Whatever else I do." Funny. I let her talk, listing off all the ways she was independent, how she didn't rely on me, how she was fine on her own. And as she spoke, I realized something. She wasn't just trying to convince me. She was trying to convince herself. I nodded. "Good. I'm glad you've got it all figured out." That threw her. I could see it in the flicker of hesitation in her eyes. She thought this conversation would end on her terms, that she'd walk away feeling powerful. Instead, I just gave her a small, knowing smile. "Since you don't need me," I said, turning toward the door, "I guess I don't need to be here." She opened her mouth to say something, but I didn't wait to hear it. I walked out, the weight on my shoulders lifting with each step. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel trapped. I felt free. And she had no idea what she had just done. The funny thing about walking away from someone who took you for granted? At first, they don't notice. At first, they think they won. For the first few days after that conversation, I half expected her to reach out, to try and have a real discussion about what had just happened. To realize, maybe, that she had said something cruel. That she had treated me like I was disposable. But she didn't. Instead, she carried on like nothing had changed. She still went out with her friends, still scrolled through her phone in bed at night, still left the laundry sitting unfolded and the dishes in the sink. If anything, she seemed lighter, like she had just shed some dead weight. Like I was the dead weight. And maybe once that realization would have gutted me. But now I saw it for what it was. I stopped trying. It wasn't some grand announcement. I didn't slam doors or pack a suitcase. I didn't throw accusations or make one last plea for her to wake up and see what she was losing. I just let go. I stopped checking in on her. Stopped sending those little "how's your day?" texts she always ignored anyway. Stopped making sure her car had gas. Stopped reminding her to pay bills on time. Stopped planning date nights she was always too tired for. And here's the thing. She didn't even notice. Not right away. At first, she was thriving. She posted more on social media, went out more often, came home later, and spent more time locked away in her phone than ever. She laughed at texts I never asked about. She dressed up when she wasn't going out with me. And every time she thought I wasn't looking, she smiled to herself, like she had escaped something, like she had been waiting for this, like I had been holding her back. And maybe she really believed that. But here's where things got interesting. Because while she was busy celebrating her newfound freedom, I was doing something she never expected. I was moving on. Not with another woman. Not yet. But with myself. I stopped waiting for her to come home before eating dinner. I started going out again. Not to bars or dates, but to places I had stopped visiting because I spent all my time trying to make our marriage work. I reconnected with old friends. I hit the gym again. I focused on my career, on my health, on me. And the more I poured into myself, the less I thought about her. The less I missed her. It was like waking up from a fog. I had spent years thinking I was fighting for our marriage when in reality, I had been fighting to keep myself in the life of a woman who had already left me in every way that mattered. And while I was finally seeing it clearly, she was too busy enjoying her little illusion of independence to notice what was coming. The first crack in her confidence showed about 3 weeks after our conversation. She came home late. Nothing new there. But instead of breezing past me without a word, she actually paused in the doorway. I was sitting on the couch, sipping whiskey, watching a game. Something I hadn't done in years because she hated when I wasted time on TV. She hesitated. "You're still up?" she asked. I took a slow sip, not bothering to mute the game. "Yeah." She lingered. I could feel her watching me, like she was waiting for me to ask where she had been, like she expected a fight, some kind of emotion. I gave her none. After a beat, she walked off. The second crack came a few days later. I had started cooking for myself. Real meals, not just the takeout I had lived on for so long. She came home to the smell of steak and roasted potatoes, something I used to make for us back when she actually wanted to share meals together. She hovered in the kitchen doorway, watching as I plated my food. "You made steak?" she asked. I nodded. She bit her lip. "You didn't make extra?" That one almost made me laugh. I used to cook for her even when she wasn't home, leaving food in the fridge for whenever she bothered to eat. I used to wait, hoping she'd sit down and have dinner with me like we used to. Not anymore. "No," I said simply, taking my plate to the living room. She stood there for a long moment, like she wanted to say something, but she didn't. And then came the biggest shift of all. One evening, she was getting ready to go out. I was at the table answering emails when she walked in wearing the dress. Not just any dress. The one she had bought for me years ago, back when she still wanted to impress me. Back when she still cared about how I looked at her. She did a little spin. "What do you think?" I looked up briefly, gave a small nod, then went back to my laptop. She frowned. "That's it." I shrugged. "It's a nice dress." Her lips pressed together. She lingered again, like she was expecting me to ask where she was going, who she was meeting, when she'd be back. I didn't, and that's when I saw it. For the first time, doubt. The smugness, the certainty, the arrogance she had carried since telling me she didn't need me. It wasn't real. She had expected me to chase her, to fight, to beg. She had expected to feel wanted, even as she pushed me away. And now, as she looked at me, truly looked at me for the first time in weeks, she was realizing something terrifying. I wasn't chasing her. I wasn't waiting for her. I was done. And she had no idea what to do with that. The cracks kept growing. At first, they were just tiny fractures. Subtle shifts in her confidence, small hesitations in her movements, fleeting looks of uncertainty she tried to hide. But over time, those cracks deepened. They spread. And soon, the foundation she had built her newfound independence on began to crumble. She had thought this was what she wanted. Freedom, control, a life unburdened by my presence. But what she hadn't counted on was how empty it would feel. And she certainly hadn't expected me to be the one thriving. It started with little things. She would come home and find me laughing on the phone with someone, an old friend, a colleague, sometimes even a woman. And suddenly, she wasn't so eager to ignore me anymore. She started texting me again. Pointless little messages. Things she had never bothered to tell me before. "Hope your day's going well. Did you see that show we used to watch put out a new season? Do you need anything from the store?" As if she was trying to keep herself in my life in some small way. I never ignored her. But I never went out of my way to respond either. And that drove her crazy. One night, she walked in and saw me heading out. I was wearing a fitted button-up, fresh cologne, looking better than I had in years. Her eyes narrowed. Going somewhere? I grabbed my keys. Yeah. With who? I smirked. You don't need me, remember? So why does it matter? Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I walked out before she could find them. The unraveling continued. She started staying home more, canceling plans, lurking in the background while I went about my life, as if trying to figure out where she had lost control. And then, one night, she snapped. It had been nearly 2 months since she declared she didn't need me. 2 months since I had stopped trying. 2 months of her watching me become someone she no longer had a hold over. She had been drinking. I could tell by the slight unsteadiness in her movements when she stormed into the living room. You're being cruel, she spat. I raised an eyebrow. Am I? Yes. She crossed her arms, her breath shallow. You're punishing me. I leaned back in my chair, looking at her calmly. No. I just stopped making you the center of my world. Her eyes flashed. You're acting like I don't exist. I tilted my head. Why does that bother you? You said you didn't need me. She flinched. I let the silence stretch, let her sit in the words she had thrown at me so easily that night. She clenched her jaw. Fine. If you want to act like this, then just say it. Say you don't love me anymore. She thought she had me cornered. That if she forced me to say it, it would be a lie. But here's the thing, she wasn't wrong. I didn't love her anymore. I loved the woman I thought she was. The woman she used to be. But this person, the one standing in front of me, acting entitled to my time, my energy, my love after she had spent so long pushing me away? No, she wasn't the woman I had married. And I wasn't the man who would beg her to stay. I stood up, walked past her, and murmured the words that made her breath hitch. You don't need me? Good. I turned toward the bedroom. Because I don't need you either. She stood there, frozen, as I shut the door behind me. For the first time since this had all started, she understood. She had lost me, and this time there was no getting me back. Started small. At first, just a shift in the way she looked at me. She wasn't smug anymore. She wasn't dismissive. She was watching. She noticed when I dressed better, when I came home late, when my phone buzzed with a message I didn't feel the need to hide. She noticed how I didn't wait for her anymore, how I no longer asked if she wanted dinner when I cooked, how I didn't remind her when the bills were due, how I never checked in when she came home late. She noticed that I had become exactly what she claimed she wanted. Detached, independent, unconcerned. And it was killing her. The first real crack in her composure came on a random Tuesday night. I was coming back from the gym, wiping sweat off my forehead as I stepped inside. She was sitting at the kitchen counter, a glass of wine in her hand, staring at me like she was waiting for something. I nodded in greeting and moved to pass her, heading for the shower. You didn't ask how my day was, she blurted out. I paused mid-step, turning my head slightly. Huh. She set her glass down, gripping the counter. I said, you didn't ask how my day was. I let out a short chuckle, shaking my head. Didn't realize we were doing that again. Her eyes flickered with something close to panic. We always asked each other about our days. That's when I turned to face her fully. I let a small smirk play on my lips, watching as she squirmed under the weight of my indifference. No, I said calmly. I always asked you about your day. You never cared enough to ask about mine. She swallowed hard, but I didn't wait for her to come up with a response. I walked past her, leaving her sitting there in the kitchen, stewing in her own realization. The next few weeks were amusing in a way. Suddenly, she was home more. She started dressing up, even when she wasn't going out, wearing the perfume she knew I liked, sitting beside me on the couch when I watched TV, making comments on shows she never cared about before. She even tried cooking dinner one night, a pitiful attempt at rekindling something that had long since burned out. Thought I'd make your favorite, she said, setting the plate down in front of me. I looked at the food, then up at her. Didn't know you remembered what my favorite was. Her smile faltered. Of course I do. I hummed, picking up my fork. I doubt that. I could see it, the desperation creeping into her features. The way she was scrambling, trying to patch the holes in a sinking ship. But I had stopped being the man who would dive in to save it. The breaking point came on a Saturday night. I was getting ready to head out again, showered, dressed in a crisp navy button-up, my cologne lingering in the air. She stood in the bedroom doorway, arms crossed tightly over her chest. "You're going out again?" she asked, voice tight. I adjusted my watch. "Yep." "Who with?" I glanced at her in the mirror. "Does it matter?" She sucked in a sharp breath, her fingers gripping her arms. "Are you seeing someone?" There it was, the question she had been too afraid to ask. I didn't answer right away. I let the silence stretch, let her drown in it. Then I turned, meeting her gaze. "Would that bother you?" Her lips parted, but no sound came out. I stepped toward her, slow, deliberate, watching as her breath quickened. When I was close enough that she had to tilt her head to look up at me, I leaned down slightly. "You said you didn't need me," I murmured, my voice calm, detached. "So why do you suddenly care where I go?" Her face crumpled. For the first time I saw it. Realization, regret, panic. She had pushed me away, and now she was watching me walk out of her life, just like she had wanted. And it was destroying her. "I made a mistake," she whispered. I smirked, brushing past her. "Yeah, you did." And then I left. I didn't need to hear her beg. I had already won. She didn't stop me that night, but I knew deep down she wanted to. I could feel it in the way she lingered near the door when I grabbed my keys. The way her lips parted like she wanted to say something, but she couldn't bring herself to admit the truth, that she had made the biggest mistake of her life. And I wasn't going to fix it for her. The next morning, she tried a different tactic. She woke up early, a rare occurrence for her, and made breakfast. I walked into the kitchen, fully expecting to grab a coffee and head out. But there she was, standing by the stove, flipping pancakes. My favorite. She glanced up when she heard me, a hopeful smile tugging at her lips. "Morning." I stared at the plate of food, then back at her. "What is this?" She laughed, nervous. "Breakfast." I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "You don't cook breakfast." She waved a hand. "I just thought it'd be nice." I let out a dry chuckle, shaking my head. "Right? Now that you think you're losing me, you suddenly remember how to be a wife." Her face fell. "That's not fair." "No." I tilted my head. "You told me you didn't need me, that you could take care of yourself." I gestured to the food. "Looks like you realized how much you actually relied on me." Her fingers clenched around the spatula. "I didn't mean." I cut her off. "You meant every word." She swallowed hard, setting the spatula down. "I was wrong." Her voice was softer now, weaker. I thought I needed space. I thought I needed to be independent. But I don't." I stared at her, letting the silence stretch between us. She took a slow step forward, reaching out. "Please, let's fix this." There it was. The begging, the regret, the realization that I had been the one thing in her life keeping it from falling apart. I took a step back before she could touch me. Her eyes widened. "You don't mean that. You're just mad. I know I hurt you, but we can fix this. We can go back." I cut her off. "There's no going back." Tears welled in her eyes. "I love you." I smiled, but it was cold. "You loved the security I gave you, the comfort, but not me." Her lip trembled. "That's not true." "Really?" I cocked an eyebrow. "You only love me now that you realize I won't be here to catch you when you fall." She let out a quiet sob, her arms wrapping around herself. "Please, I'll do better." I stared at her for a long moment, taking in the broken woman in front of me. The same woman who, just weeks ago, had stood tall and proud, telling me she didn't need me. And now, she was shattered, alone, afraid. I should have felt sorry for her. I didn't. I turned toward the door, grabbing my keys. "You were right about one thing." She looked up, desperate. "What?" I opened the door, stepping outside. Then I glanced back, my voice calm, final. "You don't need me." Then I walked away. and this time I wasn't coming back. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.